Camelia woke up against a pillar within the church. Her eyes sore from a night of bad sleep. She could see across the room that Michaela was already awake, making breakfast over a makeshift bonfire in the middle of the church. The fire was low, the heat just barely tickling the ends of the pan with bacon and eggs cooking on top. Lucian was still out cold on the pew, his long coat over him like a blanket. Camelia groaned in pain, her back creaking as she stood up. She walked over to Michaela, wincing as she took each step forward. She then looked over her shoulder and took in the smell of the slowly sizzling food. "That smells good." As she glanced over at Michaela, she noticed the dark circles under her eyes and the way her shoulders slumped forward. Camelia's eyebrows raised as she frowned, coming closer to her. "Did you sleep last?" The fever was making Lucian hallucinate. I couldn't rest seeing him in that much pain. Camelia looked down, sitting on a pew next to her brother. He was still sweating, but his usual pallor had returned overnight. She frowned, preening his hair gently. Her ribbon was still on his head, though from the feel of it, the water was now warm. Michaela sighed, taking the ribbon gently off his head. Was he still awake? He was. He was keeping me company throughout the night, telling me about Kalthos. At this, Camelia's eyes softened. He reminds me of you, you know. At this, Camelia's eyebrows furrowed with confusion. She puts her hands on her hips, raising an eyebrow. Me? Isn't he more close to Lucian? Michaela shook her head with a wry smile. Help alone, no. Overprotective, determined, strong-headed. That's you, through and through. Camelia then crossed her arms, her sharp ears pinning back with indignance. I'm just responsible. Michaela caresses her cheek before moving to reset the cloth on Lucian's face. Yes, and so is he, Duck. Doesn't mean you're any less stubborn. Camelia sighs at this, squirming away from her friend as her pointed ears droop. Speaking of Key, can you go find him? I think he wandered back into the hall. Camelia nodded, lifting herself off the pew and walking to the hall. Now that she wasn't depressed, she had more time to look at it. The ceiling was made of stucco, something she hadn't noticed before. Frescoes were painted on it, though the actual portraits themselves were smudged and painted over with white. It was almost impossible to make out fully what it was, but she could just barely see people kneeling down, praying to a star. Key lay down on the ground, staring up at it. She came over and leaned forward, blocking his view, which startled the boy out of his daydreams. Then he let out a breath of relief after he realized it was just her. Oh, hi, Camelia. You look like you rested well. That better be a joke. She lays down, facing the opposite direction, then looked up at the ceiling. So, what are you doing? Thinking. Just thinking, huh? What about? What I'm going to say to Tobias when I see him. Probably I'm sorry, but even then, I'm not even sure if I really am. It's selfish, but I suppose I just wanted him to be happy. Camelia frowned at the fresco, tracing out the whited out forms among the clouds. We really are alike, huh? Nothing. Camelia chewed at her lip, fiddling with her clothes as she considers a response. I was just thinking about what I'm going to tell Lucian. I feel like whatever it is, it'd have to be something I should have told him a long time ago. A really long time ago. You two must be incredibly close. We do everything together. We used to, that is. It feels like he built a wall between us, brick by brick, and I was just too busy to notice. Amelia walked through the halls, looking around for her brother. They were packed full of furniture, happy portraits of the family, with signs of life strewn about the tables lining doors. She walked further down, calling out to him.
Lucian? Lucian, we have cake?
I swear, if he's still hiding in his room. Camellia paused, hearing talking across the way. It was closer towards the library. It was unintelligible through the wooden door, but she could clearly make out the sound of hushed whispers. Arching her brow, she slowly made her way closer.
Now, son, if you don't get a handle on it, it could prove quite the curse.
I promise I'm trying, Father. I want to be better.
If you want to be better, you need to try better. You don't want to hurt Asta or Michaela on accident, do you? By the star! What if you hurt Marigold?
No, I don't want that.
Then try again, and we'll see.
Anger surged up her neck as Camellia gritted her teeth. She quickened her pace, practically sprinting to the library. Bursting through the door, she saw Lucian hunched over a glass vial filled with a mysterious liquid. Mephisto glanced up at her arrival, a smile of insincere warmth curling his lips.
Asta, my daughter, it's nice to see you after so long. Happy 18th birthday.
Camellia looked at him with rage, her fists clenched and shaking. Mephisto swiftly stepped between her and Lucian, as if trying to conceal what exactly he'd been doing.
I didn't get you a gift, which is a shame, but...
What are you doing? Mephisto feigned innocence, waving his hand with a dismissive flourish.
Oh, this? Just trying to help Lucian out. His divine abilities have been out of whack as of late.
Lucian's gaze dropped to the floor, his shoulders slumping as a flush spread across his cheeks.
Haven't they, my dear boy?
Shut up. Did you sneak in?
Why would I need to sneak in? The world is my oyster. Besides, I'm still Marigold's husband.
He was cut off as Camellia hurled a book straight at him. The man dodged swiftly, and the leather-bound block struck the wall with a loud thud. Mephisto turned to her, his expression flat and unamused, eyes beginning to narrow dangerously.
Do you think that'll scare me?
Camellia growled in frustration, her brows creasing as she began to back away. Her father takes a single step forward, lifting his hand out to motion to her trembling form.
You are nothing but a brat. What are you compared to me?
Let's be honest here, shall we? Next to him, Lucian shuddered, huddling closer to the desk. The deity's demeanor then turned more sinister. His eyes glowing gold as he fixed on Camellia with a look of pure disdain.
I am the herald of creation. You're just a little weed that feeds off my gifts. Now Lucian here, he knows his place, and so should you.
My place? I'd rather kneel to any god but you!
Mephisto looks like he'd been slapped in the face. Quickly, he advances on Camellia, grabbing her wrist.
The last mortal who dared utter such heresy to me is now nothing but a pathetic husk of his former self. And you, what makes you think you'd fare any better?
Let my daughter go, Mephisto! With a growl, Mephisto released Camelia's wrist and turned toward Marigold. The woman stood in the doorway, panting as if she had just run down the hall. Her hair was a mess, her eyes wide and furious as she stared at her husband.
My dear wife! There you are.
He gritted his teeth, a fake smile stretching across his face.
I was wondering when you'd show up.
Show up? This is my house, and you aren't welcome anymore. Camellia inched closer to Lucian, checking on the young boy. He appeared catatonic, his eyes darting nervously between Marigold and his father.
I guess I can tell when I'm not wanted. Lucian?
He looks at the 15-year-old boy, who jolts up with fear.
Whenever you're in need of assistance, you know who to call.
He stalks past Marigold, his shoulder smacking against her in a hostile fret. When she was certain he was gone, she let out a breath and pulled Camellia into a hug. Lucian stares at the two, then back at the liquid in front of him. The previously clear fluid was slowly turning rust orange, the water going stale.
Camellia? Are you okay?
Camellia snapped back to reality, her gaze shifting to Key. He was looking at her with wide, worried eyes. She sighed, rubbing her face to clear her thoughts, then offered him a reassuring smile. I'm fine. Just zoning out. He looked up at the ceiling, squinting slightly as he observed the blanked-out paintings.
I would too. We've been through a lot.
Our families are a mess, huh? I mean, your brother sounds like a real piece of work. He laughs, then his smile falters.
He actually doesn't like it when I call myself that.
But why? Aren't you? He quickly sits up, twiddling his thumbs.
I think I want to go on a walk.
It's safer in here, though. And we don't need anything.
This church it just gives me the creeps. I promised I won't go that far.
Camellia crosses her arms, pouting slightly as she sat up as well. We already promised we'd go out in twos. He is taken off guard by this.
Okay. You can come with me. I probably need the protection anyhow.
She smiled, then got up and walked out with him. She sees Michaela attempting to feed Lucian on the pew, who is just barely conscious. Michaela looked up, noticed the two of them, and offered them a warm smile.
Everything all right? You two were in there for a while.
Everything's fine. We're just going on a walk.
Want to hear the story again about him?
Michaela frowned as she glanced back at Lucian, who was slowly beginning to drift off again. She sighed, gently dabbing his face with a cold cloth. Come over here and eat first, then. Walking won't do you any good on an empty stomach. As they walked out into town, he looked around cautiously. The dawn sun barely rose above the town, casting pale, cold rays upon them both. The sky hung heavy with muted blue and purple dawn, streaked with ominous shades of pink among the gathering clouds. The buildings, with their thatched roofs, stood silently in the early light, their windows dark and uninviting. Many seemed oversized, looming over narrow, empty streets. In the center, a wide plaza lay deserted, marked only by a faded, tarnished gold star at its heart. Surrounding it, gates creaked on rusty hinges, leading off to other sections of the town. He appeared perturbed by his surroundings.
This isn't right. None of this is right.
Camellia glanced at him with unease. How exactly is this not right?
This isn't Helmburn. I'm sure of it.
Camelia's eyebrows creased together as they ventured deeper into the town. Similar to Cospera, this place was utterly devoid of life. Yet instead of signs suggesting recent habitation or stasis, remnants of destroyed architecture lay scattered amidst the otherwise pristine scenery. She huddled close to Key, casting him a questioning glance, but found him equally unsettled. Maybe we should look for clues?
I suppose.
As they walked deeper into the town, the destruction became more pronounced. Key's eyebrows furrowed as he noticed a weather-worn sign. Hillam. He tried to get Camelia's attention, but she was focused on something else. A trail of rotten apples and wilted rose petals leading away from them. When she finally looked over at Key, he wore a deeply disturbed expression. "It's all right if you want to go back." No. Tobias isn't going to face this himself. So I need to face it. He turns toward Camellia, who looks at him with hesitation. "We can do it together." Camellia nodded slowly, and the two of them followed the trail of apples. The scenery around them seemed to liquefy, swirling like paint, before solidifying into something entirely new. It was as if the landscape had reshaped itself. They looked around in astonishment at the sudden transformation. While the town had previously been dilapidated and desolate, now it was brimming with life, although there wasn't a single person in sight. Tall medieval buildings stood, a church overhead. Vegetation, trees, birds, almost as if this were a town in its own right. He turned and noticed a small wooden house. His eyes widened as he glanced between Camellia and the home, then began walking toward it. She hesitantly followed, unsure of what to say. Inside, they found two crudely whittled art mannequins, one dressed in a gown, the other in painter's clothes, both of them life-sized. Neither figure had discernible features, but confusion clouded Key's face.
"Ozzy, shown up again today?"
There was a labored sigh as the mannequin hunched over on the bed, putting his head in his hands. The gowned lady shuffled slightly.
"I'm sorry. I should have never..."
"It's my fault. I should just give him what he..."
"Don't you dare do that!"
The mannequin crossed her arms, lightly stomping her foot. She then let out a sigh, turning away from him.
"Besides, that won't stop him. He's obsessed."
What choice do I even have?
"We can go to Eastern Towner. Run away together, just you and me. It'll just be us."
Painter whips around, shoulders tensing with an audible crack. "Do you even understand how much danger that would put me in? You don't have to worry. You can't die." After shouting this, the painter just puts his head back in his hands. "I have to keep going, but..." He pauses, turning further away and rolling onto the bed. Just get out.
"Please,
Get out! Please. Before you just make things worse." The illusion around them slowly dissolved into oil paints. The house vanished, leaving only foundations and rubble scattered around. He looked about, visibly disturbed by what he saw. Camellia moved to comfort him, but then heard the sound of footsteps crunching on broken wood. She whipped around, spotting another specter. Its face was partially obscured by the shadows from the rubble, its ghastly form revealed underneath. The villager stared directly at Key. "You..." Before Key could react, a vine of roses shot out from the floorboards of the house. Camellia gasped, grabbing Key and yanking him out of the way.
Key, run!
Key looked over at her with fear, but was pushed to the side by her as another thorny vine whipped toward them both. The boy looks at her with desperation, about to come over again.
But what about you? I'm more than capable of handling myself. Now go!
Key scrambled to his feet, bolting away from the rubble of the dilapidated house. The villager growled, its unstable form twisting away from Camellia.
Get back here! I'll make you pay for what you did to me! To all of us!
The specter jolted as a rock passed through it. It turned toward Camellia, its face contorted with animalistic rage.
If you want him, you'll have to get through me first!
The villager lunged towards her, its face shifting from gold and flesh as it moved from shadow to light. Camellia grunted, dodging out of the way, then scrambled across the ground and tore off in the opposite direction to Key. The wraith pursued her, its initially clumsy gait morphing into a full-speed run, reminiscent of a wolf chasing its prey. Heart pounding, Camellia glanced over her shoulder. Fear etched across her face as she sprinted through the winding streets, the surroundings blurred in her panic, the eerie glow of spectral light casting long shadows that seemed to reach out for her. A sharp yelp escaped her lips as a vine slashed across her arm, tearing through her jacket and leaving a trail of blood in its wake. She gritted her teeth against the pain, adrenaline urging her onward. Turning a corner, relief flooded through her momentarily as golden sunlight bathed the street ahead. But her hope dissolved into a gasp of despair when she realized she had reached a dead end. A half-crumbled cobblestone wall blocked her path. She spun around, chest heaving with exertion, sweat mingling with the blood trickling down her arm. Fear gripped her, but she squared her shoulders and raised her fists in a defensive stance. At the end of the street, the specter stood motionless, its face an unsettling mask of indifference devoid of any human emotion.
Why do you interfere? Do you not know what he did?
What in Hollander could Key have possibly done that'd warrant this?
The villager halted its advances, its demeanor momentarily dazed. Then, with a chilling laugh, its form began to blur and smudge as if a palette knife had been dragged across a painting. Camellia stepped back, her expression twisting from shock to horror as the figure distorted within the shifting shadows. It clawed at its own head, struggling to pull its fragmented form back together.
Fool! You're a fool! A fool! A fool!
In the midst of its disjointed movements, a blade sliced through its spectral form. The figure stared into the darkness for a fleeting moment before dissolving into inky blackness, splattering across the ground. Camellia gasped with relief and horror, her hand flying to cover her mouth, eyes wide with terror as she stared down at the stained earth.
Oh, are you kidding? The specters are back.
Camellia sank to the ground, her eyes slowly rising to see the owners of the blades. Two figures draped in cloaks of pure white and black loomed over her. Their entire forms appeared to be crafted from bleached porcelain, each wearing a dark blue obsidian mask carved with flowers and vines. Already shaken from her encounter, Camellia instinctively covered her head. The figure in the black cloak approached her with deliberate steps, extending a wiry hand.
It's okay. We're not here to hurt you.
Well, they say we won't hurt you, but if you try anything, I won't hesitate.
Blanche. Camellia looked up, tears welling in her eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she reached out and took the doll's hand. They helped her to her feet, offering a silent nod of reassurance. Blanche, name befitting of their pristine white cloak, crossed their arms.
You don't look like a spectre. You're all fleshy. Yes, because I'm mortal. What is even going on?
Blanche straightens up, raising a fist, but their twin flicks them lightly.
Ugh, fine. Buzzkill.
Sorry, miss. Anyway, to answer your question, something must have thrown off the ecosystem here. I'm guessing it's your presence.
Camellia looked at them with a puzzled expression. They sighed heavily.
This realm operates on a very delicate balance. Sometimes, with unexpected additions, things can go awry. It's happened a few times before.
Camellia noticed that the twin dolls each carried a sword, their blades lined with silver and the actual edges forged from obsidian. They sheathed each weapon at their sides.
I didn't think it'd be this bad when he said things felt off.
He? Do you mean Key's brother?
Who's Key?
Camellia looked at them with bewilderment. Key, Tobias's little brother? Do you know him?
No, I'm sorry. We were never told of a Key. Though we are Tobias's stewards.
That's bullshit! Don't tell me that Tobias just forgot Key after he left. You don't even know the things he went through to get back here.
Blanche once again reached for their sword, visibly perturbed by Camelia's revelation. However, their twin swiftly intervened, placing a hand on Blanche's arm and gesturing upwards. Camelia followed their gaze and looked up into the sky, her eyes widening as she spotted billowing smoke on the horizon.
It seems like it's coming from the church.
With that, Camelia shoved past them, bolting out of the alley and running towards the church in a panic. Lost among the labyrinthine streets, she faltered, but the two dolls quickly caught up. Blanche grabbed her hand and guided her in the right direction. As they approached, the wooden planks of the church were ablaze, flames threatening to engulf the entire building. Camelia let out a startled yelp and rushed to the front door, struggling desperately to get it open.
My family is in there! Key is in there!
In a burst of adrenaline, Blanche sliced through the front door with their sword. Camelia looked at them gratefully before rushing inside, her heart pounding with fear. Inside the church, Lucian coughed amidst the smoke and flames, struggling to his feet. His eyes widened as he saw Camelia emerge through the doorway, a mixture of surprise and relief crossing his streaked features. However, looking around, she noticed that the rest of them were nowhere in sight.
Where are Michaela and Key?
I don't know. Michaela went further into the church and didn't come back. Then, when the fire started, he went after her.
Immediately, Camelia dashed past Lucian and into the dimly lit halls of the church, her heart racing in her chest. Smoke hung heavy in the air, stinging her eyes and making it difficult to breathe. The sound of crackling flames echoed around her as she searched desperately for any sign of Michaela and Key. Near the crumbling stained glass depiction of Mephisto, she spotted an open cellar door. Without hesitation, she descended into the smoke-tainted darkness. There she found Michaela pinned underneath a large piece of rubble, with Key beside, struggling to free her. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning wood. The wooden boy glanced up at her, his eyes glazed with tears of sap, anguish and determination written plain on his face. "I'm here to help." Camelia rushed over, wordlessly tearing away at the burning planks. The fire stung her skin, but she pressed on, her healing powers causing burns to sizzle and fade, her eyes glowing gold with the residual energy. Together with Key, they managed to remove the debris, revealing Michaela dazed and coughing amidst the smoke.
Doc?
I'm not letting you die!
Camelia and Key helped Michaela to her feet, supporting her as they hurried up the ladder and through the smoke-filled church. Outside, they found Blanche and Umber assisting Lucian, who looked shaken but otherwise unharmed. Michaela coughed slightly once they were outside. Camelia gently set her down on the ground and immediately began to concentrate, her hands glowing with a golden light as she focused on healing Michaela's injuries, but her eyes flickered, powers fizzling out.
Damn it! God fucking work, stupid magic work!
With an exponential amount of effort, Camelia managed to only heal a few of Michaela's burns. Exhausted and emotionally drained, she panted heavily, tears streaming down her cheeks. Michaela reached out with a burned hand, gently stroking Camelia's face in a gesture of gratitude and affection.
"I'm fine."
No, you're not. Last time you said that, you almost died.
It wasn't my time then, and it isn't my time now. Trust me. I know.
Camelia leaned her head against Michaela's chest, shuddering with sobs.
Good, because if you died, I'd travel to Nile and drag you back. I would have then, and I would now.
He slumped to the ground beside them, visibly shell-shocked. Blanche and Umber exchanged concerned glances, then turned their attention to Lucian, who sat nearby, holding his head and struggling to keep from fully panicking. "We need to get you all to Tobias." The two dolls looked toward Key, who gazes up at them with bewilderment. "I think he would have a lot to say to you."